Namoki is a watch modding website that sells you parts to mod your own watches or sells you kits to DIY your own watches. And that's exactly what I'm going to be doing today. I'm going to be building one of my own watches from one of the Namoki watch building kits. And of course, it's going to be a pilot watch. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James. You're watching me. And I am talking about watches, and I'm really excited today because I really enjoy getting hands-on with watches and doing builds just like this, especially when you sort of get a kit like this which comes with everything you need set out for you with instructions. So it's like you're getting your hand held through this experience, this creative experience of making a watch but then getting to wear that watch afterwards. And I do want to say a big thank you to Namoki. You would have seen that sponsored icon pop up. That is because they provided this particular kit to me for free so I can create this video, but then I get to keep the watch and wear it afterwards. So that's absolutely fantastic. And of course, I'm going to leave a link to their description down below. And if you do have a look on their website, you're going to see that they offer quite a few different things available for you. So if you want to mod a particular watch, they have lots of parts for you. If you just want to buy a part or a movement, they have those things too. Or they have these watch DIY kits that you can build yourself. You can buy it with or without the tools, depending on whether you have the tools or not. I asked them for the tools as well, so I have everything that I need to now build this pilot watch. And I chose this pilot watch because, well, I like pilot watches. I like the size of this particular watch. I like the look of this particular watch. And I'm excited to actually then have this watch all done, built, and get to experience this one and wear it on wrist. So I want to flip the camera around now. I want to show you this particular kit and what came with it so you can see if you order one of these what you are actually going to get. And then I'm going to do the build. And I'm going to take my time this time. I don't want to mess up. I don't want to rush it. And even though I'm going to be filming it, which normally adds a few elements to it to make it a little bit harder, I'm just going to take my time. I'm going to do it properly because I really want to wear this watch. I'm excited to have this one. And I'm excited to do another build. So first of all, let's check out what you get when you order one of these watches. So with the Namoki watches, when you get a do-it-yourself watch build, it comes in some fairly simple packaging. You get some instructions, a couple of cards and warranties. All the pieces for the watch is actually in these two tins. We've got a strap that comes with the watch. And then this big package, which you think perhaps might be a little bit more to do with the watch, is actually all the tools and all the things you're going to need to put this watch together. As you can see inside these two tins, we've got the movement and the case and the dial and all the little bits and pieces. But now we're going to head over to my desk because it's going to be a lot easier to build this watch over there versus in here. So let's flip the camera and let's get into this build. And I'll show you also, whilst I do that, some more of the sort of specifics about what's in these tins. So here are all the things that come with the kit. You can see that I think that's the movement there, the dials inside this one here, hands are in this one here. As you can see, yep, there's the little hands there. I think they look quite good. I'm using two cameras for this particular thing, so hopefully these shots aren't too bad. I think having watched this now, it's not perfect, but it's close enough really. So we've got the case there as well. And what am I showing you there? I don't know, a spring bar or something. No, actually that's the crown tube stem thing. Here's the instruction manual that I'm going to show you now. So it's actually much sort of simple step-by-step instructions. As it turned out, as I was doing it, it was a little bit tricky, but these instructions basically give you the basics of what you're going to need. So I've got the movement out now. I've got the movement holder there, and this is the dial that I chose, this the Spork, I think it's called, but it's a pilot watch from Namoki. And I think it's actually a really good looking sort of dial. I'm really sort of looking forward to doing this sort of a build project, trying to get the dial now onto the movement. And what it says in step one is that you need to remove two of these little sort of things. Now, the kit, even with all the tools, doesn't come with pliers. I've had to use my own pliers here. But you have to sort of line up and figure out which of the two that you need to take off here so it lines up with that movement, because there's four little stem posts there. And you need to figure out which ones to remove to obviously fit this particular movement, which I think is the NH35. So it's probably a dial that fits a couple of movements, so you just have to find the right pins to remove so then it sort of clicks in. And there we go, now I've got it clicked into the movement. The movement holder there that I'm actually using from a different build project, because the one that came with this one, as you can see just above there, it didn't really seem to be as comfortable to use. Make sure you get rid of all the dust on the dial. Something I have done previously in the past when doing builds is not get rid of enough of the dust, and that's caused me issues because then I've had to take things out of the case and put things back in the case and then take them out of the case. So this time I've decided to be a little bit cleaner and actually clean the dial a little bit more so that I don't need to do that. Now moving on to putting on the hands, and well, I'm going to be honest here, I end up having to do this a couple of times because the first time, well, it sort of seemed to start doing okay, like getting that hour hand on to begin with wasn't too bad. It sort of went on fairly straight. I'm using the Radico there, which is that little sticky sort of Play-Doh looking stuff. I find that personally the easiest way to do it, plus you're then not going to leave a mark if you use the tweezers. I then use this little stick thing that comes with the kit just to get it into the right place. Because before you start sort of doing this, you need to sort of click the movement over to midnight, and you can do that by sort of moving it around, and you see the calendar wheel move and you can hear it click. So once it has clicked, you can then set the hands up for 12 o'clock. These are the tools that I'm using that came with it. You sort of got a little hole in the middle of it, so you push down. Now you make sure you use the loop as you go along. That's another mistake that I made previously. I wasn't paying attention as I went along as often as I should have. This way, use it at each step so you know you're doing the right thing. So what I was looking for there was to make sure that it was pushed down enough, but also that it wasn't pushed down at an angle so it wasn't touching the dial. Now speaking of that, and that's what I was trying to do, but then I made a bit of a mistake here with this minute hand. It felt like it went on properly. It felt like the gap was quite good between the hour hand and the minute hand. However, what ended up happening was that it wasn't pushed down enough. So at this point in time, I didn't know that, but it ended up causing some dramas a little bit later on. But right now, I'm just trying to sort of line it up with the 12 o'clock again, using that stick that's also involved as well. So I don't want to be scratching these hands, because the last thing you want to do is to leave a big scratch on the hands. And that's certainly something that I'd probably do if I wasn't paying a bit more attention and wasn't using a wooden stick that doesn't scratch the hand. And you also don't want to scratch that loom that's on the dial either, or on the dial at all, anything. So now I'm sort of using the tweezers, but I'm just being careful with them because I'm really worried about that scratch. Need to line it up. I've sort of got it lined up, use the stick to sort of help line it up. And then I'll go back to one of those tools there, that one there, try and find the right one. There's a few different ones, and push down. Now, as I said, at this time, I felt like I'd lined it up. I then used the loop, the loop there, looked to see the gap between the hour and the minute hand, and it felt like it was okay. But as it turned out, it was not pushed down quite enough. So I'm pushing down a bit more now. So I really feel like I'm pushing down on it. But yeah, I'm still sort of learning how to do this, and I'm still sort of being careful not to push too hard on the hands, because you're sort of a bit worried you're going to damage something and pushing down onto that movement holder. So now the bane of my existence, this second hand. Yes, that's why I'm pointing there. I'm thinking, oh, this is going to be difficult. And guess what? It was extremely difficult. And it wasn't just because it's a hard thing to line up, because it has to go onto this tiny little stem, this tiny little hole in the second hand itself to actually line up with that sort of little pole or little pinion or whatever it's called in the actual movement itself. But what was a bit harder was because that minute hand was not seated properly, it meant that it was almost impossible to get the second hand to go into place, which is why I then spent the next 30 minutes trying to get the second hand. And don't worry, I'm not going to show you 30 minutes worth of footage. I'm just going to show you a little bit of my first initial attempts, and then I'm going to skip forward just a little bit because it does get a little bit frustrating, and it would certainly be a bit frustrating to watch. I can tell you it was a tiny bit frustrating to do, but I was keeping room to remind myself that this is meant to be fun and I'm enjoying it, and I do like building things, and even though this is taking a long time, I do need to sort of just enjoy it. Now, I've skipped ahead a bit here now, because what actually ended up happening was that I ended up bending the second hand, which, because the minute hand was sat too high, it sort of bent it. So I had to sort of bend it back, and I felt that I got it bent back. As you can see, I've added a light now because I just needed to have some better sort of view of it. But I ended up finding that it kept fouling the hands. Because the second hand was very slightly bent, it kept hitting the minute hand. And then I realized, oh, that minute hand is not seated properly. So I'm going to remove all the hands using the technique that I've seen on another channel before, using a piece of plastic and these little hand removing tools. And then I'm just going to start again, which I think was the right thing to do, because really I had to get that minute hand seated better. And then that made the whole process a lot easier. And you'll see in a second, as I sort of move everything around and then I start this process again, it all just seems to sort of fall into place, which is really nice. It was almost easy getting all the three hands on after this, which was a really nice thing to be able to achieve after that frustrating half an hour that I've just spent trying to get them all in place. So just going to move it back around, make sure that it's back to 12 o'clock, and I'll do that again by adjusting until the date wheel clicks over at midnight, and then I start moving the hands. So I've sped this up a little bit now because it's going to get a little bit boring if I don't speed this whole process up a little bit. But you'll see, even using that Radico, it kind of keeps flipping over. That was a slight pain in the butt as well, because I'd pick it up and they'd drop off, and then of course they'd fall down the wrong way. But look, hour hand on, push down with the tool, double check, and it's done. Wow, that was awesome. Now, minute hand, now thinking again that I'm going to have to do this a little bit harder this time, and more than that, to actually look a little bit sort of closer to ensure that it is seated properly onto that pillion thing or that thing. So I'll probably grab the loop there and have a bit of a look, make sure that it's sort of set. Second hands, now look how quickly this happens, because remember last time I did it, it took me about half an hour, and this time, wait for it. Yep, it's on. I can't believe it is on. I can't believe after that first attempt and how getting those hands in place was so difficult that I was able to do it literally that quickly. Now this is sped up a little bit, so it was a tiny bit slower than this, but this is when I then start coming into the idea that, yeah, that second hand is definitely being bent a little bit, so it's still fouling the hands slightly. So I then have to start doing a little bit of let's say a tweak on that second hand, a tweak on the other hand. So I'll start moving things around a little bit. Let's see it. See that? Yep, the second hand's just fouled on that minute hand. So that's a bit of an issue, which I'm going to have to sort out. So here I'm actually just trying to bend it back a little bit, sort of maybe lean it backwards a little bit, so lifting up the front. I've also found that there's a thing which you can do. You can use plastic or a piece of paper or something. You can stick it under the hand and lift it up slightly, bend it up slightly. So now I have to be aware, but now that the hand has been bent up slightly, then I need to look at the back of the hand as well, because the sort of counterbalance was then fouling on the minute hand too. So I end up doing this for a little while, because there's no point putting this all inside the case and getting it all sat correctly for it just not to run, because the second hand was going to foul continually on the hands there. As you can see, I'm now just using my fingers to push on them a little bit, because I thought, well, by this stage, I think really, yep, let's just get this sorted out. Let's just push down, and I've already bent them a little bit. Let's just use whatever tools that I have available to me, including my fingers, to try and get this sorted. And if I didn't mention before, you can see those black things that are on my hands. I think they're called finger cots. Basically, they're like half gloves, so you don't have to wear full gloves on your hands, so you don't have to sweat. I hate wearing rubber gloves. My hands just instantly start sweating, and it's kind of gross, really. So these are actually quite good. Now, what I'm going to do now is another frustrating thing, and I've done this too many times. Every time I try to remove a crown stem, because that current crown stem in there is like a temporary one that you use, I just always forget that you need to push the crown stem fully in to then allow you to get access to the little button to then pull the crown stem out. So there's a good little tip. If you're looking to remove a crown stem, push the crown all the way in first. Oh yeah, it's still fouling a little bit. Oh, so what I'm doing here is I'm using the puffer to try and get rid of any dust, because I've had that issue multiple times before, but the puffer's pushing just a little bit on the hands, causing them to move and start fouling again. So I'm trying to balance getting rid of the dust versus stop the hands touching each other. Because I get it correctly, I get it right, I get it all set, I get the hands fine, I hit it with a puffer and it just moves it just that tiny little fraction, just enough to actually cause some issues for me. So next step, how the sort of movement and the dial and the hands are on. I think by this stage the hands have stopped fouling on each other. I've been sort of happy with how it's ended up. So now I've got the case, and I've got to get the movement and the dial into the case without causing any issues. Now, this took me a couple of goes, because I sort of seemed to go on a bit of an angle, because you've got to be a bit careful, because I'm trying to go from the front down here so I can line it up correctly, but I don't want to push too hard on the back of that movement, which is on that little holder there. I do end up achieving it. It only took me about about two goes, sorry. And I find that it sort of went on a little bit of an angle, so I end up just having to push down on one side just a tiny bit, just to click it in. And then when you get the crown stem itself, you use that. I think that's the crown stem there that I'm trying to pull out. Yep, the crown stem, because that's the one that's actually already pre-lengthed length. Is that a word? No, I don't think it is it? It's already pre-cut to the correct length, whereas that one there, which I try first, is just a spare one and it's way too long. So I end up just using that one to get the movement into the correct position. So I'm sort of using the long crown stem that came with it just to ensure, and yeah, I'm pushing down on the movement there just to push it into the case a little bit. But now I've pulled that longer crown stem off and putting the shorter crown stem on, which I found out recently since playing with the watch a little bit, that I think I need to take that back out again and just lock that onto the crown itself a little bit more. But as you can see now, it actually clicks straight in. It's the correct length. It's now the movement. Everything is placed in the correct positions. Clean out the movement a little bit. Get this gasket, stick that in, and we're almost done, guys. This is very much the last sort of bits that we got to go, other than me going back later on and maybe taking that crown out and perhaps putting that in a little bit tighter, because I've been finding as I've been unwinding the watch, it actually unwinds off the crown stem a little bit. So, but that was me. I was being a bit worried about putting too much force on it. But right now it is working, and I'm putting the case back on now. You can see I've sped this up a little bit more. Use this little tool that came with the kit. It's great, all the tools that came with the kit. I pretty much used all of them. There was a couple of tools that weren't there that I end up having to use that I've had before, or things like my pliers. But really most things were either with the kit or things that I would normally have around the house anyway. Yep, that's me thinking I'm very happy because it is now done. So I'm going to now put the strap on it. And what I want to say here is the spring bars that were sort of already attached inside the case were these massive, thick, chunky things, which are really cool. So I'm actually going to keep those spring bars, maybe use them for a different watch. I'm just confirming that everything's not fouling and everything's sort of working before I then put the strap on, making sure that crown is actually screwing onto the screw down crown, because this one is a screw down crown, and it is. I was just a bit worried that perhaps it was the wrong length of thing. Yeah, there's me being very happy that it's done. Get that light out of the way. Get these spring bars off. See how big those spring bars on that are actually currently with it? So I just removed those ones and then just put the strap on. That's the last thing that I'm going to be doing before I show you what this watch actually looks like on my wrist. And I'm going to say, now that I've actually got the watch in my hand and on my wrist, it's really nice. The polishing is good, the brushing is good, the dial, it's a really good looking watch. The strap itself is also really nice. Quick release spring bars, as you can see there. And I'm done. Look at that. It's done. Oh, there's a piece of, last little bit of sticker. I left that on while saying, oh yeah, that's me saying, look how fat these things are. So that's the last thing to do. I'm going to stick it on, a little bit of a puff there from the puffer, and we're going to be done. So guys, thank you so much for coming on this journey with me, on this build with me. I hope this hasn't gone for too long. I have cut out some of the boring stuff for you guys. The frustrating parts for me, but every time I do one of these builds, I am learning stuff, so I'm really enjoying doing it, and I end up with this really cool watch at the end. So thank you very much to Namoki for this, and guys, make sure you check out some of my other videos after watching this build, and I'll put up a couple of tiles of some of my other builds. Thanks for watching.